You keep saying you're stuck in your finances, stuck in your career, stuck in your relationships. But what if you're not stuck at all? What if the only thing trapping you is the size of your thinking? See, most people don't have a resource problem. They have a vision problem. You're praying for increase while planning for survival. You're asking God for overflow while budgeting for barely enough. You're waiting for opportunity, but opportunity is waiting for you to think bigger. You don't get what you want. You don't even get what you pray for. You get what you believe you're worthy of and what you're prepared to handle. If your goals don't scare you, they're insulting your potential. If your vision doesn't require growth, it's not a vision. It's maintenance. You're not stuck. You're just thinking at a level that matches your comfort instead of your calling. And today, that changes. Let me tell you something that might stretch you a little bit. Your life will never consistently rise above the level of your beliefs. You can attend conferences, you can read books, you can set goals every January, but if your internal belief system doesn't shift, your external results will always drift back to what feels familiar. Because whether you realize it or not, you are always acting in alignment with what you believe you deserve. If you believe you're only capable of earning a certain amount, you will subconsciously sabotage anything beyond that. If you believe healthy relationships are rare, you'll tolerate dysfunction. If you believe success is for other people, you'll find evidence to support that story every single day. Your self-image is the thermostat of your life, not the thermometer, the thermostat. A thermometer only reads the temperature. A thermostat sets it. And most people are walking around with a mental thermostat set to average, wondering why their life never heats up. You don't outperform your identity for long. You might hustle your way into a breakthrough. You might grind your way into a new income bracket. But if your identity doesn't match that level, you'll unconsciously make decisions that pull you right back down. Not because you're cursed. Not because God is holding out on you, but because your beliefs create invisible boundaries. And here's what's dangerous. Those boundaries feel normal. Small thinking doesn't feel small when you've lived in it your whole life. It feels safe. It feels practical. It even sounds responsible. I'm just being realistic. But realism is often just doubt wearing glasses. You have to understand something powerful. Your mind is always looking for evidence to confirm what you already believe. If you believe opportunities are scarce, you'll see competition everywhere. If you believe money is hard to make, you'll notice every obstacle and ignore every opening. If you believe you're not qualified, you'll magnify your weaknesses and minimize your strengths. But the moment you shift the belief, everything shifts. When you start believing you are capable of more, you begin to see possibilities that were always there. When you believe you're worthy of abundance, you stop apologizing for your ambition. When you believe you are called to impact at a higher level, you stop shrinking to fit rooms that were never designed for your expansion. Your beliefs are not just thoughts. They are instructions. They tell your brain what to focus on. They tell your body how to respond. They tell your decisions what direction to take. And here's the part most people miss. You chose many of your beliefs without realizing it. Somebody told you what was possible. Somebody modeled limitation. Somebody passed down fear disguised as wisdom, and you adopted it as truth. But inherited beliefs are not permanent beliefs. They can be examined, they can be challenged, they can be replaced. If your results are smaller than your potential, don't attack your effort. Investigate your beliefs. Ask yourself, what do I actually believe about money? What do I believe about success? What do I believe about my own value? Do I truly believe I can build something significant? Or do I secretly believe I should just be grateful for scraps because your life expands to the size of your dominant belief? If you believe you are meant to survive, you will survive. If you believe you are meant to serve at scale, you will grow into that scale. If you believe you are capable of building generational wealth, your decisions will begin to align with long-term multiplication instead of short-term comfort. Belief precedes behavior. Behavior produces results. So if you want different results, you don't start by changing your circumstances. You start by upgrading your belief system. You start by exposing yourself to bigger thinking. You start by speaking differently about your future. You start by refusing to entertain narratives that shrink your capacity. You don't need more time. You need a bigger internal standard. You don't need more luck. You need a new level of expectation. Because once your belief expands, your vision expands. Once your vision expands, your strategy expands. Once your strategy expands, your actions expand. And when your actions expand consistently, your life has no choice but to follow. You're not stuck because opportunity passed you by. You're stuck because your beliefs haven't caught up with your potential. And the moment you decide to believe bigger, your life will begin to expand to meet it. Let's talk about why small thinking is so dangerous. Small thinking doesn't just limit your dreams, it dictates your decisions, and your decisions determine your direction. When you think small, you make survival choices. You don't make expansion choices. You don't ask, how can I multiply this? You ask, how can I protect what little I have? And there's a big difference between protection and production. Survival thinking sounds responsible. It sounds cautious. It even sounds wise. But most of the time, it's just fear trying to look intelligent. When you think small, you avoid risk at all costs. You hold on to money instead of investing it. You stay in positions that drain you instead of pursuing opportunities that stretch you. You lower your prices because you're afraid people will say no. You shrink your vision so it fits your current resources instead of expanding your resources to fit your vision. That's survival mode. Survival mode says, don't lose. Expansion mode says, let's build. And you cannot create wealth, impact, or influence playing defense your whole life. Think about it. If all you're trying to do is avoid losing, you'll never position yourself to win big. Every great breakthrough requires leverage. Every great increase requires movement. But movement feels risky to someone who is trying to hold everything together. Small thinking convinces you that safety is the highest goal, but safety rarely produces significance. When your mindset is small, you focus on minimizing losses instead of maximizing opportunities. You ask, what if it fails? Instead of, what if it works? You calculate the downside but ignore the upside. You see obstacles more clearly than you see openings. And here's what's subtle. Small thinking keeps you busy. You're working hard, you're paying bills, you're maintaining, but you're not multiplying. There's a difference between maintaining a life and building a legacy. Maintenance keeps things from falling apart. Multiplication creates overflow. When you think small, you make short-term decisions. You trade long-term equity for immediate comfort. You choose convenience over capacity. You avoid discomfort, even if that discomfort is the very thing that would stretch you into your next level. You say, I'll start when I'm ready. You say, I can't afford to risk that. You say, let me just secure what I have first. But the truth is, you don't secure abundance by gripping tighter. You secure abundance by creating more value. Small thinking sees money as something to keep. Big thinking sees money as something to deploy. Small thinking sees time as something to spend. Big thinking sees time as something to invest. Small thinking sees relationships as transactions. Big thinking sees relationships as partnerships. When your thinking is small, you operate from scarcity. And scarcity changes your posture. It makes you hesitant. It makes you reactive. It makes you compete in rooms where collaboration would produce far more. But when you shift into expansion thinking, everything changes. You start asking different questions. Instead of, how can I survive this month? You ask, how can I build something that pays me for years? Instead of, how can I hold on to this client? You ask, how can I create so much value that clients seek me out? Survival thinking plays not to lose. Expansion thinking plays to dominate through service and value. And I need you to understand this clearly. You cannot build extraordinary results with an ordinary appetite. If your appetite is small, your effort will match it. If your expectation is small, your actions will reflect it. If your vision is small, your strategy will shrink to fit it. But when you enlarge your thinking, you give yourself permission to move differently. You stop negotiating your worth. You stop apologizing for your ambition. You stop asking for permission to grow. You start building systems instead of chasing paychecks. You start creating assets instead of collecting expenses. You start thinking generationally instead of weekly. Small thinking keeps you calculating risk. Big thinking keeps you calculating return. And here's the irony. The person trying to avoid all risk usually ends up experiencing the greatest loss. The loss of potential, the loss of impact, the loss of what could have been built if they had simply decided to think beyond survival. You were not designed to just get by. You were not created to barely maintain. There is something in you that wants to build, to expand, to create influence, but that part of you will always be suffocated if your mindset is stuck in protection mode. You cannot step into overflow while making decisions from fear of lack. At some point, you have to decide that playing small is costing you more than playing big ever could. Because the moment you stop thinking about survival and start thinking about multiplication, everything in your life begins to move in a different direction. And survival decisions will never create extraordinary results. Let me stretch you a little deeper. You keep asking for more income, more opportunity, more influence, more favor. But the real question isn't whether more is available. The question is, do you have the capacity to handle it? Because increase doesn't just show up where there's desire. Increase shows up where there's capacity. You can pray for overflow all day long, but if your mindset, habits, and discipline are built for just enough, you'll either repel abundance or mismanage it when it arrives. And then you'll say, it just wasn't meant to be, when in reality, you weren't prepared to sustain it. See, comfort and capacity are not the same thing. Comfort is staying where things feel familiar. Capacity is stretching into what feels unfamiliar so you can handle more. Most people choose comfort and then wonder why their life stays the same. They want increase without expansion. They want promotion without preparation. They want multiplication without management. But growth requires enlargement. If you want to earn more, you must become more. If you want to lead more, you must grow more. If you want greater influence, you must develop greater discipline. The level you're asking for requires a version of you that doesn't exist yet. And that's not an insult. That's an invitation. Because capacity is built intentionally. When you increase your knowledge, you increase your capacity. When you refine your character, you increase your capacity. When you develop emotional control instead of reacting to everything, you increase your capacity. When you learn how to manage small resources faithfully, you increase your capacity for larger ones. You don't prepare for overflow after it arrives. You prepare before. Think about it. If someone handed you 10 times your current income tomorrow, but your spending habits stayed the same, your discipline stayed the same, your thinking stayed the same, how long would it last? If someone gave you massive visibility, but you lacked integrity, how long before it collapsed? Capacity determines sustainability. And here's the part most people miss. Growth will feel uncomfortable. Expansion will stretch you. New levels require new skills, new associations, new standards. You cannot stay mentally where you are and expect your life to elevate beyond it. You can't ask for bigger rooms while thinking like someone who belongs in smaller ones. Sometimes the delay you're frustrated about isn't denial. It's development. It's time being used to shape you into someone who can steward what you're asking for. Because if you receive something you don't have the capacity for, it doesn't bless you. It burdens you. So instead of constantly asking, when will it happen? Start asking, who must I become? Who must I become to manage that level of income? Who must I become to lead at that scale? Who must I become to handle that kind of influence? Because expansion is not automatic. automatic. It is intentional. You expand your capacity when you raise your standards. You expand your capacity when you stop tolerating excuses. You expand your capacity when you choose discipline over distraction. You expand your capacity when you put yourself in environments that stretch your thinking instead of shrink it. And here's something powerful. When your capacity increases, opportunities start recognizing you. People trust you with more. Doors open more easily. Responsibility increases, not because you begged for it, but because you built for it. Overflow is attracted to preparation. If your internal container is small, even a small blessing feels overwhelming. But when you enlarge that container and when you think bigger, act bigger, prepare bigger, and what once felt intimidating becomes manageable, capacity gives you confidence, not arrogance, confidence, because you know you've grown into the level you're stepping into. And growth requires stretching beyond comfort. You can't cling to old habits and step into new dimensions. You can't hold on to small routines and expect big outcomes. You can't think like who you used to be and live like who you say you want to become. Something has to expand. And here's the beautiful part. Capacity is within your control. You may not control every opportunity. You may not control every connection, but you absolutely control your growth. You control what you study. You control how you manage your time. You control whether you respond with maturity or emotion. You control whether you develop the skills required for your next level. And when you take responsibility for your expansion, everything shifts. You stop blaming circumstances. You stop envying other people's success. You stop questioning why it hasn't happened yet. Instead, you focus on becoming the kind of person who can handle it when it does. Because the truth is simple. Increase isn't waiting on permission. It's waiting on capacity. And the moment you become large enough internally to sustain what you're asking for, it won't have anywhere else to go but into your hands. Let's go even deeper, because this is where it gets personal. Your environment is not random. It is a reflection. It mirrors what you expect, what you tolerate, and what you believe you deserve. If you expect little, you will accept little. Not because that's all that's available, but because that's all you've given yourself permission to receive. Expectation sets the standard. If you expect relationships to be difficult, you'll normalize dysfunction. If you expect business to be a struggle, you'll subconsciously create friction. If you expect money to be hard to keep, you'll make decisions that confirm that story. You won't even realize you're doing it because expectation operates quietly beneath your awareness. But it is always working. You don't rise to what you wish for. You rise or fall to what you expect. Expectation determines what you tolerate, and what you tolerate determines the quality of your life. When your expectation is low, your standards are low. You allow conversations that disrespect you. You stay in rooms that don't challenge you. You price your services beneath your value because you assume people won't pay more. You remain in environments that shrink your ambition because you're afraid of outgrowing them, and then you wonder why nothing changes. But when your expectation rises, everything shifts. When you expect excellence, you demand excellence from yourself first. When you expect growth, you seek environments that stretch you. When you expect abundance, you stop operating from fear. When you expect impact, you stop playing small to make other people comfortable. Expectation affects your posture. A person who expects little walks cautiously through life. They ask for less. They settle faster. They compromise quicker. But a person who expects more moves differently. They negotiate differently. They speak differently. They show up differently. Not arrogantly, confidently. And confidence isn't loud. It's rooted in belief. If you expect your business to grow, you invest in systems before you feel ready. If you expect opportunities to come, you prepare instead of panic. If you expect your future to be greater than your present, you stop clinging to what no longer fits. Because expectation gives you vision beyond current evidence. Here's what most people don't understand. Your external world adjusts to your internal standard. If your internal standard says this is good enough, life will stabilize at good enough. If your internal standard says there's more available for me, your mind begins scanning for more. You start seeing options you previously ignored. You start recognizing connections you previously overlooked. You start identifying possibilities you once dismissed. Not because they suddenly appeared, but because your expectation changed your awareness. Expectation is powerful. If you expect rejection, you'll hesitate in conversations. If you expect acceptance, you'll engage boldly. If you expect failure, you'll approach opportunities cautiously. If you expect growth, you'll approach them strategically. And here's the truth. You train people how to treat you by what you tolerate. If you tolerate being undervalued, you'll be undervalued. If you tolerate mediocrity in your habits, you'll produce mediocre results. If you tolerate inconsistency, you'll live inconsistently. But when you raise your expectation, you automatically raise your boundaries. You say no to distractions faster. You say no to underpayment faster. You say no to environments that drain you faster, not because you've become harsh, but because you've become clear. Clarity increases standards. Standards shape outcomes. Your circle often reflects your expectation. If you expect small conversations, you'll surround yourself with small thinkers. If you expect growth conversations, you'll seek people who challenge you. If you expect wealth-building dialogue, you'll move toward those building assets instead of excuses. Expectation attracts alignment. And sometimes raising your expectation will make you uncomfortable. It may even make others uncomfortable, because when you decide you expect more from yourself, it forces a shift. It disrupts the equilibrium of your current environment. But that discomfort is evidence of growth. You cannot elevate your life while keeping your expectations anchored to yesterday's limitations. You cannot build extraordinary results with average standards. You cannot experience expansion while expecting survival. So the question becomes simple. What are you expecting? Are you expecting to just make it through the year? Or are you expecting to build something meaningful? Are you expecting to barely get by? Or are you expecting to create overflow? Are you expecting your circumstances to dictate your future? Or are you expecting your vision to shape it? Because whatever you expect consistently, you will unconsciously move toward. Your environment is echoing your expectation right now. If you want a different echo, you have to change the sound. Raise what you expect from yourself. Raise what you expect from your habits. Raise what you expect from your results. And watch your world rise to meet it. Because your life will always align with the level of expectation you refuse to lower. Let me clear something up, because this is where a lot of people get it twisted. Thinking bigger is not arrogance. Playing small is not humility. Somewhere along the way, you were taught that shrinking yourself was virtuous, that wanting more meant you were greedy, that desiring influence meant you were prideful. So you learn to downplay your vision. You learn to soften your ambition. You learn to act like you didn't really want what you deeply wanted. But minimizing your calling doesn't make you humble. It makes you unavailable. If you have the capacity to solve bigger problems, but you choose to stay small, who suffers? The people you were meant to serve, the families you were meant to impact, the communities you were meant to influence. Your growth is not just about you. It's connected to everyone assigned to your obedience. When you think small, you limit your reach. When you limit your reach, you limit your service. And when you limit your service, you limit your impact. That's not humility, that's hesitation. True humility isn't thinking less of yourself. It's thinking of yourself less while maximizing what you've been given. It's recognizing that your gifts aren't for your ego, they're for contribution. But contribution requires expansion. If you can help 10 people, why settle for helping 2? If you can build one stream of income, why not build 5? If you can create change in one household, why not create change in a generation? Bigger thinking isn't about flexing. It's about fulfilling. And here's what's powerful. The size of your thinking determines the scale of your obedience. If your vision is small, your actions will be small. If your vision is expansive, your actions will rise to meet it. You cannot create generational impact with a maintenance mindset. Some of you have been dimming your light in rooms that were never meant to contain you. You've been lowering your voice so other people don't feel insecure. You've been shrinking your goals so they sound realistic. But realistic according to who? People who stopped dreaming? People who got comfortable? People who decided average was acceptable? You weren't built for average. And stepping into that truth doesn't require arrogance. It requires alignment. Alignment with your potential. Alignment with your assignment. Alignment with the level of impact that's possible through you. When you think bigger, you don't just make more money. You create more opportunity for others. You hire more people. You give more generously. You build systems that outlive you. You solve problems at scale instead of individually. That's not ego, that's stewardship. Playing small helps no one. It doesn't inspire, it doesn't transform, it doesn't build legacy. It keeps you safe, yes, but safety is not the goal. Significance is, and significance demands expansion. You cannot multiply impact while minimizing vision. You cannot change communities while staying confined to comfort. You cannot build legacy while obsessing over short-term approval. Bigger thinking will require courage. It will require you to outgrow certain conversations. It will require you to disappoint people who benefited from your smallness. But growth always disrupts comfort zones, yours and theirs. And here's the truth. The reason bigger thinking feels uncomfortable is because it stretches your identity. It forces you to see yourself differently. It demands that you stop identifying as just enough and start identifying as capable of more. But you don't expand for applause. You expand for assignment. If you're going to think, you might as well think big. It takes the same energy to think small as it does to think big. And it's called, but one produces survival and the other produces legacy. When you align your thinking with your true potential, your decisions change. You stop chasing small wins and start building long-term value. You stop asking how can I get through this, and start asking how can I grow through this. You stop trying to fit in and start building something that stands out. And when you do that, your impact multiplies. Your family feels it, your community feels it, your industry feels it, because expansion creates overflow, and overflow was never meant to stop with you. So don't confuse shrinking with humility. Don't confuse playing safe with being wise. And don't confuse small thinking with righteousness. You were not created to hide your capacity. You were created to expand it. And the moment you stop playing small is the moment your life begins to match the size of your true calling.